Hey everyone, this is Harrison Elmore, and we're talking about this little puppy right here. So what is this? This is a new Baltic release. This is basically their bi-compacts that you might have seen before, but now in essentially a gold tone. So we're gonna go over what's different between it and the original, what I like about it, general pricing, general things that I like about the watch, and then obviously things that, like on any review, that I don't like very much. Just as a note, it just got released. Details will be down below of when you can order it and when you can actually receive it. Just as a heads up, no money transferred hands, but Baltic did send this to me for free so that I can do this review. So the watch is, as I said, a bi-compacts. What that means is this is a manual operation watch in a gold tone, so it's a dress watch. It's got this step bezel on the outside. It's 38 millimeters in diameter. You can see the rest of the specs in terms of lug to lug and thickness. Now the watch being a manual operation at about $600 or 600 euro, I have to do the conversion. You can see that on there. You can probably guess what movement is driving this watch. It's the same movement that most affordable chronographs are running. Some people have problems with it. I don't. I've had some issues in the past, but the watch itself, because of the price point for a manual operation column wheel actuated chronograph, I don't have that many concerns or question marks around the movement itself. It's a design that's relatively old, and so there aren't as many modern refinements. Like, you don't have a balance hack built in the movement, meaning that when you pull out the crown, it doesn't stop the seconds hand. The seconds hand will keep running, but the minute hand you'll still be able to adjust while it's still running. So you can't get it precisely to exact time right now. And that's just, one of those things that you find on old movements and you typically find on this movement itself. For history on that movement, you can find better videos than this one. The watch is obviously going to have two pushers, start stop, and then the other one being the reset. And then the main crown here on the side. Knurling on the main crown is nice. You can actually wind it pretty easily. That tends to be a point that's overlooked, but that's important to me for operating it, especially manual wind every day. It's a little sharp, but it allows you to get your fingers on there and make sure you can grip it and turn it as you're winding the watch. And then obviously you pull out the crown and you set it. The bi-compacts layout and look of the watch. Now, I hadn't even paid attention when Baltic came out the steel version, which you can see here. I like it. I mean, the general design is one that's very classic, very Art Deco, kind of what you're used to. But what I didn't notice were the lines that were basically like a sector dial and a bi-compacts put together. And it in the gold tone is pretty nice. Now, the question that most people have is going to be, how do you have a gold looking watch for around $600? And the reason is that they use a gold PVD coating. Now, there's a lot of information out there in terms of golden layer of gold on the outside of the watch. And then you have gold filled, which is just like a layer of gold coating on the outside, which is what the gold PVD is. You're not going to have any melt value to the watch, but it gives you the same look, and you can adjust exactly what color tone you want in terms of the gold with a gold PVD coating. And the gold PVD typically has a better durability to it, so a better shelf life for durability over time. Now, I have no qualms with a gold PVD watch versus a solid gold watch, mainly because I don't wear dress watches that much. So if I have to spend a little bit less, or I get to spend a little bit less, but I still have the general aesthetic with a gold PVD, I have no problem with it. The issue is always just wearability over time, but it being an affordable watch, I think you get what you expect. So I actually have no problems with that. I actually really like the watch anyway, so I'm kind of looking past that. Hey, quick note, if you like this video, stick around. I have a video coming out about Omega and an Aquaterra that was bought on the gray market and one of the bad experiences a subscriber had with it. So if you're interested in content like that, do me a favor, hit subscribe down below. That way it feeds it up to you in your homepage later on. The step bezel is something that's a little interesting. It's not something I would typically see, I guess. It looks almost as though there is a platform there where there should be a bezel that gets glued onto the outside of the watch, or they're planning to eventually use the exact same case architecture to eventually glue a bezel on the outside of the watch, but there isn't currently a bezel attached. Or whoever they buy their cases manufactured from uses this case as a design that typically has a bezel that gets glued onto it. So they call it a step bezel. To me, it looks like just a bezel that's missing. Now it's not unattractive, but it is a lot of real estate on the outside there, where you would typically expect to see another piece of metal, or to shorten the whole thing, reduce the outside case to match the bezel. Either way, it doesn't detract from the watch. It still looks really nice. It does give the added benefit of a little extra dimension, which I do think is kind of nice. So just something to note there. Step bezel, gold PVD. The layout here on the dial, I love. I've actually been looking for this exact style of watch for basically since I got into watches. Now, I've looked at vintage a lot, but the problem with vintage is those are typically gold plated or gold filled, and they wear down over time. And so you're typically going to have some of that gold plating that has worn through in certain areas of the watch if you're trying to buy it for a relatively reasonable price. If you're willing to spend the money, then sure, you can get a solid gold version of some watches that are, Art Deco from the 40s, 50s, or 60s. So I've looked for a while. And while I know that there are different examples that exist out there, I was looking specifically for a 38 millimeter case in a solid gold, or even a gold filled that is in good condition, with this style of layout to the numerals and the bicompacts aspect. The sector was an added benefit in this case. And, I have not found the watch that I was willing to spend the money on. So when Baltic reached out and said, hey, do you want this watch? This is basically what our layout looks like. They're actually releasing 3 models today. A micro rotor version of their M01 in gold PVD. This watch, this bicompacts, and then their HMS, I believe is what it's called. You can see the model here, which is basically looks like the bicompacts, follows the exact same layout as the bicompacts, but doesn't have the subdials or the chronograph part of the watch. And the pricing is all here as well in terms of that release. So they said these 3 are releasing. I said, I want to look at that bicompacts because that's exactly what I've wanted to have. So this watch is not going anywhere. It's going in my collection. I can guarantee you that right away. I don't know how long it's going to stay because a lot of things move in and out, but I don't plan on getting rid of it unless I buy another dress watch that I do wear more often. But for the next several months, this is going to be my dress watch. So the pros for the watch in general: design, layout, sizing. 38 is perfectly fine. The crown mechanism, I do love the fact that you can get an affordable chronograph for under $600. That's one of the best things about modern watches in general for us people that are into this hobby. Obviously, some teething issues do happen with these movements, but if you're willing to forego all that or forgive all of that, then the actuation is fantastic. The start-stop is great. The reset is a little soft when you press in on it. Sometimes you don't actually feel a click. You just see it bounce back. So without taking it apart, I don't know exactly why I'm getting that soft reset, but if you do have an issue, 1, Baltic has a great warranty program with all their watches, and 2, it's easy to swap out if you're outside of the warranty program. Anyone can do it. So that isn't something I typically worry about on this movement anymore. As I said before, the aesthetic is fantastic. The PVD part of it, as opposed to gold plating, I actually prefer. I would consider that a pro just because it wears a little bit better. And along with the design, the last element I love is the sector dial and the leaf hands. I just think everything on here was obviously very inspired by Art Deco. So it's not like they took any huge risks in the overall layout of the watch, but when you take no risks and you go for classically inspired, you end up with a watch that is very appealing and very pleasing to the eye. Oh, another pro is the see-through case back. This is one thing I do like about this affordable movement, is I feel like for a normal person that isn't going to be, hypercritical about how rough the finishing looks or how the screws were blued, the movement is actually quite nice looking. And I think that's something that these movements do always have, is they look generally appealing, and they do have a column wheel actuation. I don't have any preference between the two, but the fact that this is a column wheel chronograph that's relatively well decorated without it being super refined, I think this is really, really cool. If you're trying to get someone into watches, this is definitely one of those that you could give them and it would get them really excited. So I love that it is see-through case back on this watch. In terms of cons, it's a little hard just because there's not as much to cover that I haven't already covered. That some people may not like the PVD coating, and that's fine. You can always buy a solid gold watch. Some people may not like the movement, but you're not going to find a mechanical chronograph without using this movement under typically $1,000 brand new. Now, I could be wrong. There may be some variations that are different, but if you're buying a Solida or an ETA, the movement alone is going to cost you $300 to $400. That's if you're just buying the movement off the shelf. That's before you've actually made the case and everything else. Now, you can say that the crystal here, the Hesalite, is what they would have used back when this Art Deco style was popular. In this case, obviously I would love a sapphire, but again, we're trying to hit a certain price point. So I have no problem with the Hesalite either. So one of the other cons is going to be this strap. This is a Italian calfskin leather strap. One of the issues you're going to have, especially on a thin leather strap, and this is Italian calfskin leather, you're going to have creasing here that over time, if you keep using the same hole, which most of us do when we put our watches on, you're going to break down that area of the strap very, very quickly. So if you're going to get this and you're going to use their strap, which I like the look of the strap, it's just one thing you have to note about thin leather straps is they can break down at the point where you buckle it, because you have to keep tightening it and then actually pressing against that same spot over and over and over again. I would highly recommend putting it either on a deployant clasp, or if you're not going to use their strap, then look at something else, at least to put it on in the meantime. But the strap is nice. It's just one of those things you're going to have with thin leather straps, as they break down really quickly. This is part of the reason why dress watches aren't my favorite, is just because that's one of the aspects that happens with a lot of the straps for dress watches. You guys have watched this channel, I'm always honest. I love this watch. I really do. When I opened it up, sometimes I open up and I look at a watch and I think, oh yeah, okay, that's nice. This felt like early in the days of watch collecting, where every time I opened a watch, I was like, man, that's way better than I thought it was going to be. This is like that. I absolutely love this watch. I've been wanting to wear it for the last few days, but it hasn't been released to the public. So I wore it a couple days underneath a jacket, and I just, didn't want anyone to happen to see it. Most people don't know who I am, but on the off chance I run into someone, I didn't want to out Baltic before anyone else saw it, so I'd wear it under my jacket and try and hide the fact that I had it. But now that I can wear it openly, I will be wearing this thing to work. I'll be wearing this thing a lot. I don't typically dress like this, but I thought I had to, because I thought this watch called for a little bit of a nicer appearance. But either way, absolutely love the watch. Going to be in my collection here for a while. Well done, Baltic. I think this even looks better than the original version of the bicompacts. I would prefer the gold over the steel and any of the steel colors. I just think it looks sharp. Very elegant. Black dial. My wife loves it too. That's always a win. So what are your thoughts? Leave them down below. And any questions, obviously you can leave them there as well. And I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.